Marjorie Taylor Greene is genuinely funny to me because she's one of the loudest, most obnoxious, most arrogant MAGA people. But she seems to genuinely think like, oh, I'm freaking this. Like, I'm nailing it. Like, she thinks like I'm doing a great job here in DC and I'm fighting for my side. But like, she has just a litany of idiotic things she's done. So for example, she's proposed over like 10 attempts to impeach Joe Biden. And the stuff she's tried to impeach him over is the funniest stuff of all time. She tried to impeach him over withdrawing from Afghanistan. I mean, first of all, that's something Trump said he wanted to do. And he said he supported it. He didn't follow through, but he said it. And I'm sure Marjorie Taylor Greene at the time was like, yes, I agree. Biden actually does it, and she tries to impeach him over it. Okay? They also tried to impeach him over opening up the border, which he literally didn't do. In fact, for most of his time in office, he kept a lot of the Trump-era rules in place. Title 42, remain in Mexico. So he just makes stuff up, right? It's just utterly made up. Well, now she's got this new bill that she's proposing that she's going to go on Charlie Kirk's show to brag about. This is astonishing. Watch this.
Charlie, today in Washington, D.C., we have President Zelensky came to the Capitol today, of course, talking to leaders with Washington, wanting billions and billions more dollars, Americans' hard-earned tax dollars, to go to a war in Ukraine, defending Ukraine's border, while at the same time, Washington, D.C. is completely ignoring the invasion happening at our border. There has been over 10,000 people invade Eagle Pass in the last 24 hours. This is unprecedented. Our country is under attack. And who is leading the attack, Charlie, is the Mexican cartels. And so I'm announcing on your show that I would like to get Washington to realize who our real enemy is to the American people, who's responsible for 300 Americans dying every single day from fentanyl, who's responsible for a multi-billion-dollar human trafficking and drug trafficking industry that directly affects the United States of America. And that is the Mexican cartels, not the Mexican government, not the Mexican people. So I am currently drafting a declaration of war against the Mexican cartels. And I'd like to challenge anyone in Washington that beats the drums of war and beats their chest about fighting Russia to wake up and realize the oath of office they took is to the United States and the American people.
Let's be clear about how this works. AMLO, the president of Mexico, has said, no, you cannot invade our country. No, you cannot do drone strikes or fighter jet strikes against the cartels. No, you can't send SEAL Team 6, special ops, can't do boots on the ground. You can't do any of it. We're a sovereign country. They're attempting to handle the problem, and this is beyond the pale. And she's saying, I'm gonna draft a declaration of war against the Mexican drug cartels. Well, in order to go after the Mexican drug cartels, you have to invade Mexico, whether by air or by land. You're gonna have to do it, okay? So what she's calling for is a declaration of war against Mexico, one of our top trading partners, illegally invading, disregarding their sovereignty, and doing a war. By the way, just so you know, we've had this thing called the war on drugs for a long time. A very militarized approach to dealing with the drug problem. That's what we've already had. And what are the results? How's that going? It's going horribly. It's going abysmally. In fact, one of the strategies we've used is called the decapitation strategy, which means, hey, if you take out the top person, maybe it'll all disintegrate and the leadership structure is gone, and then the cartels are in disarray and they'll be diminished, they'll dissipate, they'll be gone, right? Well, what happened when we actually did the decapitation strategy? We created mega cartels. So you took out like El Chapo, and then the people who were underneath El Chapo, they both want to be the next top dog. So then there's a literal war in the streets of Mexico from one cartel against another cartel, and they're vying for power and control and money and influence. And so literally the exact opposite of what they thought would happen is what happened. They thought if we take out the top guy, everything will fall apart. Turns out you take out the top guy, then you have a splintered cartel, and they go to war against each other, and civilians get caught in the crossfire. That didn't work. In the same way that doing a literal war on drugs overall did not work. If it was going to work, it would have worked by now. We're decades and decades and decades and decades in. And instead, we have more drug use. What's the actual way to deal with this? Legalize, tax, and regulate drugs. That's how you deal with it. In the same way that we were able to defeat the mafia when we ended prohibition against alcohol. When you made alcohol illegal, the mafia was able to get very powerful because they were selling all of the black market booze. So they got the money, they got the power, they grew in strength. But then when you legalized, tax, and regulated alcohol, boom, it fell apart because they couldn't compete with the legal market anymore. And it would be the same thing for drugs, the same thing. But they refuse to entertain this counterintuitive solution. Instead, it's more of the same. And it's actually even worse. It's like, let's put our drug war on steroids and make it a literal hot war. Invade Mexico. It's astonishing. And then she does this whole thing about how, she's anti-war because she doesn't want to help fund Ukraine to beat back the Russian invasion. And then in the next breath, she's like, but I do want to invade Mexico. So you're not stop with this. You're not anti-war. You're not remotely anti-war.
To defend our borders. And if they want to talk big like that, then they should defend our country. And that is what the Defense Department is all about, is defending America, defending Americans in our states. And they are failing on the job poorly, very, very poorly.
Yes, they are. And what is nauseating, Marjorie, you have to serve with them, is so many Republicans seem infatuated with Zelensky, and they couldn't care less that yesterday, and we have the B-roll here, thousands and thousands of fighting-age young men, not DNA tested, not background checked. We don't know who these people are, just waltzing right into America to invade the country. Can you help me understand, why do so many Republicans not care about America, but they care about a foreign country that most Americans can't pick out on a map? What is going on in their head?
I can't comprehend it, Charlie. Some of them tell me that, we made an agreement with Ukraine years ago when they got rid of their nuclear weapons, that we would help defend that country. But here's the situation. We aren't defending our own country. And Charlie, I just said to you that I'm writing a declaration of war against the Mexican cartels.
Even to talk about this immigration issue as if it's an invasion is grotesque. By the way, you want to stop this problem? The answers are very simple. In fact, AOC was on the Sunday shows talking about this the other day. We have vicious sanctions right now against Venezuela, and so there's tens of thousands, or maybe even hundreds of thousands of people fleeing Venezuela to come to the U.S. because we are further economically crippling that country. Now, it's not all of our fault. It's not all the fault of the sanctions. They have a lot of problems of their own that they're going to have to deal with, right? But when we add fuel to the fire and make the problem worse and make it like an unlivable country, then of course people are going to flee because they want to have a decent life and they want to make sure their kids are okay. And so that's exactly what's happening. So you want to lift those sanctions? Do you want to lift those sanctions? Because that would help to stem the flow of migrants, certainly the Venezuelan ones, from coming here. Now, in terms of, the rest of them, whether it's from Central or South America or Mexico or wherever, again, ending the war on drugs is a big part of this. It would help massively. You want to make it so people don't want to leave their country in the first place. Well, they need jobs. They need opportunity. They need, to feel like crime isn't rampant. There are things we could do to try to bring that about, right? We could stop meddling and overthrowing governments in South America, which is a pastime in America that we've been doing for so long. We can stop meddling in those countries. We can stop sanctioning everybody and their grandma if they're not a government that's perfectly in lockstep with our corporations. We can stop the drug war. These things alone would help massively to stem the flow of migrants. And then the other thing is to deal with it on the ground at the border. The answer is actually very simple and straightforward. You need to process the asylum seekers. And in order to do that, you need immigration judges. And we don't have nearly enough immigration judges at the border. So we need more immigration judges to go down there so that instead of having to wait 3 or 4 years on an asylum claim, you can get it done within 6 months or whatever. Like, these are all things that can be done to address it. But instead, what's her solution? Let's wage war on the Mexican drug cartels, which, by the way, I got bad news for you. That would lead to even more immigrants coming here because they're going to want to escape the violence in the streets, which is already bad enough, but she would make it worse. So there you have it. By the way, it's not only her saying this. I think it's almost every Republican candidate at one point or another has said the same thing. I know Vivek Ramaswamy has said the same thing. I know DeSantis has said the same thing. I know Trump has said the same thing. Really scary stuff, man. Really scary stuff when the position on the right that everybody agrees with is war with Mexico. By the way, we should look at polling on that. I bet it's under 20% of the country wants war with Mexico. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.